The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. We're done with running backs. We went through player by player with Chris Meaney and Joe Pisapia. You can check out all of those shows, if you missed them, in the description of this show. Today, we are starting part one of the wide receiver player profiles. Are we going to do every single wide receiver over the course of this series? No, of course not. There's like 700 wide receivers. Probably some guys that we'll try to mix in some of the lower end names with the higher end names if they play on the same team or something like that. But we're going to be hammering home number one from ADP all the way down to maybe like 45 or 50 or something like that. And then eventually we'll get to the rankings. And there's a lot of football to be played and there's a lot of time between now and then. So we got some time to fill here. If you out there want to help out the show, please smash the like button to the episode. And in the comment section, you tell me which of the top 10 wide receivers you think is most likely to be a bust in 2020 fantasy football. Also, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. Leave it a 5-star review and say something you enjoy about the show. That would be quite helpful in spreading the word of the show around. Joining me in studio, Chris Meaney.
What's up?
What's happening?
Yeah, you know.
They lift the guidelines and you can come back in.
I can come back in. Hands are sanitized, and
We're 6 feet away.
We're 6 feet away, and we're talking football.
Yes,
life is good.
Life is getting. I would say life is good. Life is getting slightly better.
Yeah, I mean it's been a rough few months to say the least. But yeah, it's getting better.
Joining us on the line to help us break this all down, one of the industry's most accurate rankers and regular guest of the show from theathletic.com, Jake Ciely. What's up, dude?
Not too much. I like Chris's initial answer. Just
yeah.
I feel your pain. I missed you, Chris, already.
I know. I heard you on the show yesterday. It was I liked your intro better than the actual intro of the show that you that you produced yesterday.
I poured out a maple syrup for you.
I respect that.
So I just want to let everyone know, because this is going to be dropping either tomorrow or a week from tomorrow. I haven't quite decided yet from where we're filming this. There's a lot of different sports going on right now, generally individual sports, NASCAR, golf, MMA. I got a ton of golf content, and I got a ton of UFC content up on the Pat Mayo Experience feed. So if you want to bet or if you want to play some DraftKings on that, I suggest you check out those shows. We're rolling right now. Yeah. And for golf, fantasynational.com/Mayo. Get yourself a discount over there if you're serious about like entering the million. There's millionaire makers like every single week. It's great.
Yeah. The millionaire maker on DK this week was wild. And I mean, it filled up in a hurry.
And there's one for next week too.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
Golf's back. Wearing the golf shirt. Watched a little bit earlier. I'm fired up.
It's like normalcy is
coming
slightly
back.
returning.
Yes.
So
coming back.
One thing that we do enjoy to do is talk about fantasy football on the show. Let's do that. Michael Thomas is the number one receiver per ADP right now. Around average draft position 5. That separates him kind of from the pack. The way that he's being drafted right now, he's kind of on a tier of his own, separated from Davante Adams and DeAndre Hopkins and Tyreek Hill. Those guys are all going in basically the second round. But I don't necessarily see a huge difference between Michael Thomas and Davante Adams. I just don't. In terms of fantasy upside.
I actually do. So I'm going to stick with what we saw last year for the point difference that we saw. Forget the season long. Let's just talk points per game. Over 3 per game. Chris Godwin was second. And that's the big thing about Michael Thomas. I understand Adams still has that basically wide receiver situation to himself because the Packers keep screwing around with Aaron Rodgers and ignoring wide receiver. But we saw Alan Lazard pop up. They have hopes for Jay Sternberger at tight end. There's other options. The fact that Drew Brees is back with Michael Thomas, I don't know that he necessarily 100% replicates last year, but I do think he's on a tier by himself. I think he's the only one. You know how much I love taking running backs in the first round. He's the only wide receiver I would consider taking before 7 or 8. And then I'm actually with you. We had this discussion before. Adams would be number 2 for me. But even if it's Adams, Julio, whoever you want to put there, I just think Thomas is by himself.
So Michael Thomas in 18 career games has over 10 catches. He only has 11 games with under 5 catches. So the consistency is there almost every single week. But Emmanuel Sanders is now a part of this mix. Not to say that like Michael Thomas is going to get drafted.
But there wasn't a true 2 there last year.
That's the whole thing. Like, are we projecting that he just replicates what he did last year? Because if that's the case, then yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's him, and it's him basically alone. But maybe some of the touchdowns get scaled back a little bit. I don't know. Like if I'm sitting there at
well, to jump in real quick is like to your point. I only have him for 121 receptions this year, but that's still to give you an idea from my projections. That puts him 30 points in front of Davante Adams, second place behind him. So over the season, it's not quite the 3-point gap from last year, but it's still a huge gap. And I have him losing around 20 receptions.
What do you have projected touchdowns for Michael Thomas? I'm curious.
10. He's the only person I have in the double digits. Touchdowns are inherently low. You probably see somebody get 11, 12, maybe 13, but you have to remember because it's somebody gets left off somewhere, funneled over, injuries, blah, blah. It's kind of hard to how many quarterbacks you really project for 40 plus touchdowns. So he's the only one with 10. Davante Adams, for your point, is 9.5. He's not far behind him.
Yeah, I think I would make if you had to ask me if it was a straight up wager of who would score more touchdowns this year, Thomas or Adams, I'd probably take Adams.
I might take Adams too. Yeah, just because he's the clear number one option in the red zone. I mean, they got a ton of running backs there, but he is, and even over the years, we've seen Aaron Rodgers when he's healthy among the top leaders in red zone passing attempts, and Adams is always right there too. I am with Jake in the fact that I have Thomas 1, but I think it's a lot closer than he talks about.
So you're with me on this one.
I suppose but there's no question I would rather have Thomas, and he would be the one that I would take the shot on in the first round.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about Davante Adams then and put him into this mix. He is ADP number 2 at wide receiver, but he's going around pick 13. I think Davante Adams at pick 13 at the turn, let's say in a 12-team league, is a better pick than Michael Thomas at number 5.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, Thomas is, if he's going to go, according to the ADP here, if he's going to go in the 5th overall, I'm just not going to have any shares. I'm probably more likely to draft it back. And if I'm near the end of the first, then I'm going to get Adams and I'm going to probably pair him up with a back. But I mean, if you're just splitting between the two, Thomas, like you said, has just been so consistent. He's been healthy. And when Drew Brees left last year, he was still a dominant wide receiver with Teddy Bridgewater. We know if Jameis comes in, he can be good enough had 2 wide receivers on his team last year that were top 10. So, but with Adams, there's just nothing there besides him. We're getting excited about Lazard because he showed up a couple times. MVS didn't do anything. There's just nothing there. So I think in terms of targets, I wouldn't be shocked if Adams had more targets than Thomas. Yeah, he had a 31% target share once he returned from injury over the past 7 games last season. So that was weeks 10 to 17. I think, Jake, when you look at it, we talk about full season stuff, and I know that Michael Thomas had the Teddy Bridgewater thing, although he basically just locked into Michael Thomas and just threw it to him every single time on these intermediate routes, which Teddy Bridgewater kind of excels at. Ted Ginn didn't do so hot with Teddy Bridgewater last year, but with Adams, I think you can kind of parse his season into pre-injury, injury, and then after injury. After injury, the points per game was almost about even.
Yeah, see, and I understand that, but I'm also looking at Davante Adams, go back to 2018, which only one game, he played 15 out of 16 games that year. And he was on the same pace last year if you break it down game by game. And that's where I'm still going to go with Michael Thomas because I'm looking at it right now. That was 169 targets 2 years ago, and he only caught 111, partly because of Adams, partly because of Rodgers' play at this point. And I'm not saying it can't be better, but Davante Adams has pretty much settled into that 160, 170 targets over a full season equals somewhere between 115, 120 in reception. So I feel like his ceiling is basically Michael Thomas's floor for me, my opinion this year, his floor, because I'm kind of projecting Michael Thomas at a floor at 121 when last year he was 140. So I know I just threw out a whole bunch of numbers, but basically what I'm saying is I understand the argument for Adams and that there's very little there. Emmanuel Sanders, I don't think he's the Emmanuel Sanders he used to be anymore. I don't think going to New Orleans Saints is all of a sudden going to make him look like he did 3 years ago. He's better competition than Ted Ginn was, but Drew Brees has always spread the ball around across everybody. It's not like Drew Brees' attempts went down or were more spread out. So I think Michael Thomas is fine. I don't think Emmanuel Sanders is going to hurt his target share as much as some people might think.
Well, I just think that you have to bake in a little bit of natural regression when one guy breaks the reception record in a year. And you've done that. But to say 121 is a floor, I mean, thinking about Michael Thomas, that actually does make a lot of logical sense to me. And that's 20 fewer receptions than he had last year. But maybe some teams be like, you know what? Maybe we try to take away Michael Thomas. Maybe just a little bit.
Good luck.
Good luck is probably right. Yeah. So this isn't an argument about who should be 1 in the rankings. Michael Thomas is number 1 in the rankings. Yeah. I guess my question I pose to you, Jake, is Would you rather have the 5th pick and get Michael Thomas and then whoever's available at the next pick, or have the swing pick and get Davante Adams and one of those running backs?
I'd rather, for your point about that, about the value you have, a swing pick, because at 5, as much as I love Michael Thomas and he's the only one I would consider taking, I'm still going to go running back. So for me personally, because I want to get the bell cow, because they're so hard to find them in wide receivers, as we'll find out when we do this show, the rest of the show, how ridiculously deep it is this year. And I know that's cliche and you say it every single year, but it's never been more true. I mean, just the way, I know we're not doing this now, but like Rashard Perriman's at 55, Alan Lazar's at 54 for me. Those are in the 50s with guys who can finish as wide receiver 3s. That point being is I'd rather not overdraft a running back at 5, because I feel like I'd be pulling somebody up, and then be able to do what you're saying and get the swing pick and take Adams and Joe Mixon or something like that, instead of forcing myself to take Joe Mixon at 5 or 6.
DeAndre Hopkins is the 3rd wide receiver off the board.
Yeah.
When I said at the beginning of the show to smash the like button and leave your potential bust, I think Hopkins is the guy. And it's nothing... He might be the most skilled of all these guys. And there is a scenario where he's just so good in this Arizona offense that he's the wide receiver 1 by far. I think that's on the lower end of outcomes. And the more likely scenario is that offense is not going to be funneled through him necessarily. He's going to be like, just take away 30% of his catches, 30% of his targets. Then he has to be so much more efficient, which is plausible in that offense. But there's just so many more options in the way that Kingsbury likes to utilize everyone in the offense that just, it doesn't seem like anyone's going to go out there and average 13 targets a game.
No, I agree. And you go look at Hopkins over the years, and yeah, there's no debating the skill set. But you go look at just a couple years ago when he had 170 targets, 108. That's just not going to happen in Arizona. Like, I don't think in year 1. Maybe next year, year 2, a second year with Kyler and Kingsbury and perhaps. But I just feel like he's, out of all these guys, and we'll get to a guy later on that's on the list that I think could be outside the top 10, but you're right. Out of all these guys that are going in the top 5, I think Hopkins for sure is the one where we just don't know.
He has the most risk, I think, attached to him based on situation of the top 5 guys that we'll get to. He's going around pick 14. Jake, do you see it the same way that we do? Or is it like, hey, Arizona went out and traded for DeAndre Hopkins, despite the fact that all they had to do was give up David Johnson for him in a second.
It's a gift.
But does that mean that they pepper him and try to get him back up to his normal target base, or is he just going to lose some of that opportunity?
I think he loses a little bit, and that's why my initial reaction when you said that was kind of just because he does probably have the biggest risk. Although I think at the same time, he might have the highest ceiling right alongside Michael Thomas. The problem is, as you mentioned, and as Chris was pointing out, the past 2 years, he's averaged just about 10 targets per game over the past 2 seasons with Deshaun Watson. And I think Kyler Murray's a terrific passer. And as we've been seeing so far early in 1 year in his career, that the NFL is way too overreactionary for what his height might do to his career. Great deep ball. I don't think there's going to be the fall off from that aspect. Like, I don't think going from Watson to Murray is going to hurt DeAndre Hopkins. What I think is, to your point, is he going to see 10 per game? I don't see in this offense with Christian Kirk's finally playing well last year, although he missed some time as well again. But Larry Fitzgerald still hanging around the backfield. There's just, as you said, a lot of weapons. We like to see 4 wide from Cliff Kingsbury. I just don't know he averages 10 per game. And even 9 per game sounds like, oh, it's only 1 less per game. But you get 8.5, and now you're just talking over the full season as somebody like you might only finish with 130 and only 130 targets. It's not terrible, but he's not going to be 1, 2, or 3 in wide receivers.
Yeah, that's the case.
Yeah.
It's not that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be unownable.
Right.
It's just instead of being wide receiver 3, he might be like wide receiver 11 or something like that. And then he's just not worth the pick.
Yeah, we're not having this conversation if he's with Houston. We're just like, okay, he's 2, 3. You can make the case if you want to take him over Michael Thomas. Like, we've seen a good track record of him in Houston. It's a new offense. It's a new feel. It's a new quarterback. I agree with Jake. Like, Kyler's going to be fine, but he still has a lot to learn as well. I mean, took 48 sacks. Half of them were on him. I mean, a lot of people want to just point to the offensive line, but there's still some growing pains with him. Like, Deshaun Watson it's an upgrade. It's a slight downgrade, I'll say. Like,
Potentially.
I think
if Kyler, there's a lot of quarterbacks who take a leap year 1 to year 2.
Sure.
And Kyler seems primed to be that guy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people banking fantasy football hopes on that he's that guy this year.
A lot of people, yeah. I mean, Kyler is, we're not talking quarterbacks, but Kyler is, if you want him, you're going to have to take him in the.
Yeah,
he's
top
one of the
3
helium
quarterbacks.
players.
Yeah, which completely makes sense. I mean, we saw that with his MVP odds right away. I think he
Yep.
opened at like 75 or 80 to 1, and people hammered that. He's like 15 to 1 to win MVP.
He is.
For reference, this happened last year to a player, and that player was Mitch Trubisky.
Yikes.
I think the Kyler is not in the Mitch Trubisky bucket, but just be wary once everyone is in on a certain guy. Like Jake said, like there's a route to Hopkins taking over here and having as much upside as Michael Thomas. It just seems like there's considerably more downside attached to him too. And that's why I think that Adams deserves to be in the tier of Michael Thomas. Like if you were to tier these guys, maybe you could say Thomas is in a tier by himself, but then I would just have Adams in a tier by himself if he wasn't in that tier. And then there's the rest of these guys. At least that's the way that I would see it.
Why are we tossing away Julio Jones?
We're not because we're not at him here, and we're going player by player.
No, but you said the tier by himself, so
Yeah.
I figured that's why
Julio's
I
not
bring him in. Like,
Julio's not an Adams tier. Give your head a shake, Jake. Come on now.
No, he's saying Thomas has a tier, Adams has a tier, and then we get into the rest of the tier with.
no, see, that's where I'm saying, like, no way. I actually have Julio of less than a point behind Davante Adams for the season. Why are we hating on Julio?
Sounds like you need to readjust your rankings, pal. But we need
Why are we
to.
hating on Julio?
Because we're not even at him yet. We're at Tyreek Hill, who is the 4th wide receiver coming off the board, pick number 17.
Is this too rich for you?
I don't know if it's not.
Yeah.
It's a very acceptable ADP. It's where he should go. But I don't know if I don't know if I'm the person who wants to put, like, he is the type of guy that you would want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would actually feel better taking Kelsey in this spot or like a few picks before rather than taking Hill. Just because I think, as Jake pointed out, there's a lot of depth at wide receiver. But when he hits, he wins you the week.
That's the thing. I mean,
yeah, but to your point, Chris, here, I'll give you, I'll bring up the guy I hate. He's slightly richer, better, because he's not the poor man version. He's slightly better. He's a slightly better version of Amari Cooper for fantasy purposes.
yeah. No, he is. I mean, there's
Amari Cooper wins your weeks, and nobody, well, at least on this show, nobody wants Amari Cooper. Why do we want a Tyreek Hill for any different reason? He's slightly more consistent, but to your point, Chris, go look at the game log. Look at how many single digit 6.5 point, 7 point games he has. It's not Amari Cooper bad, but it's not that far away where I'd take Julio 1,000 times before I took him.
Well, since 2018, Tyreek Hill leads the league in 40 or more yard catches. He's done it in 13 games despite missing 4 games over that stretch.
Last year was
when he hits so big.
Of course.
Yeah. He does.
And
DraftKings.
And I would,
every week.
That's usually the thing. Like, you should always build a Chiefs stack with Kelsey, Hill,
100%.
and Mahomes.
And,
just do that
always.
every single week. Maybe that's the way that you want to do it. He is sort of like the absolute richest version of like vintage Deshaun Jackson there is.
Yeah. So, and when I
That's
take
another
my
good
wide
one.
receivers early, I want a little bit of safety there. I want a guy that I know is going to get 8-9 targets a game. It's not.
It could depend on this type of format you're playing to. Like, we're talking about like general 12-team regular fantasy football leagues. If you were playing in one of these like high stakes leagues where you know not only like need to win your league, but you're also competing against all of the other leagues, this is the type of guy you want.
Yeah, you're shooting for the upside.
Yeah, you're
shooting
hoping
for
like, this is
high
the season
ceiling.
he's just consistent across the board with these big games. And he's the number 1 wide receiver by far.
Yeah.
That's just not likely to happen. But in that sort of like something like the Scott Fish Bowl,
Right.
like you want to take the highest upside players possible because you're going to need them all to hit if you want to beat 3,000 other people.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you can even go, Jake, I mean, you know this. You go back to even before last year, because last year he suffered the injury and he was in and out of the lineup and you had to deal with that. But even 2018, he had those inconsistent games. There was some talk that he couldn't play at home and he could, like the home road splits were just eye popping. Was that actually a thing? And it's just, this guy only needs 2 catches, 3 catches to single handedly win you a week. Because you just rattled off the stats. I mean, 40-yard touchdowns are almost a given. Like he's going to have at least 5 to 7. I was going to say like half of his games will probably include one of those big bombs.
And he has other ways. He has other ways to get involved too. Like they'll throw him like
rushing.
weird reverses around like the goal line, and every once in a while he's going to return a punt for a touchdown if they decide
the game with 3 touchdowns all different ways, right?
Yeah,
And
like
the
he
rushing.
has different ways to get involved because you want to use him as much as possible.
I'm with Jake though. I like Julio more. I think there's more safety.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is this kind of goes back to your DeAndre Hopkins thing, Pat. Is like I'm not hating on Tyreek Hill by any stretch of the imagination. It's just I have it number 4. It's just my biggest thing since we got through what you were already talking about. DeAndre Hopkins is like my big thing is Julio Jones. I want to know why everybody hates on him. I want that answer. We need to answer that question.
I think
now.
people just assume that
He's starting to suffer from the Marvin Harrison corollary, where everyone at this point now has owned Julio Jones.
Yeah,
and
they're done with him?
But no, because people have a very weird memory when it comes to fantasy players. So when you own Julio Jones, very rarely do you remember the 14 catch 300-yard game. You remember the game where it's like
he was on the side.
he's hobbling to the sidelines again. Why? How didn't he score that touchdown? Like, he's that guy.
You're
he's
exactly right.
But he hasn't done that the past 2 years.
I understand that, but you have to remember what sticks out in people's mind too. Like, he's led the league in air yards each of the past 2 years. He is a fantastic receiver. Yeah. I would also rather have him over Tyreek Hill as well. He's going at pick number 19. I think that's better value than Tyreek Hill. He's going to be more consistent than Tyreek Hill is. He might not have the overall upside, but I think that's what people hammer down on. Yes, the touchdowns come, but if you wanted to separate someone like Adams and Julio, Jake, I think the difference for me is if you told me that one of these guys scores 16 touchdowns this year, it's going to be Davante Adams.
I could definitely see that argument for it, but I don't think that Julio Jones should be. That was that 1 year where he only scored 3, and like to your point, everybody just keeps remembering that. I don't know, what did he have the past 2 seasons? I want to say like 8, 6, 7. Yeah, 8 and 6. It was that 1 year. He's actually had 6 every single season except for that one in 2017 where we're just like, what the hell happened? So I think that your point's right. Is like people are focusing on I owned him when he was hobbled. I owned him when he only scored 3 touchdowns. I owned him, and instead of Julio Jones has been one of the most dominant, consistent wide receivers and should be. That's why I was bringing it up when you said Adams. For me, it would go Thomas, Adams, and Julio in their own tier, and then let's talk about the rest.
Well, he and Hopkins, Julio Jones, are the only receivers in the league to score at least 5 touchdowns in 5 of the past 6 years.
Yeah.
So
consistency, and you guys are both dead on. Like Pat, you're absolutely right. When you bring up Julio in circles, it's like I don't want to deal with him. I mean, he hasn't been healthy.
Yeah, he's
the
a
past
headache.
couple years,
Despite the fact
you look at healthy the last.
You look
2
at the
years.
numbers, and he's always like top 3.
Yeah, he just always
he sucks,
finds
though.
a way to finish. Yeah, you're gonna go through some growing pains where maybe he's gonna be questionable for 4 weeks in a row, and maybe he's on the sidelines in the red zone. Those things happen. They've happened.
They happen to
get
everybody.
used to it. Yeah, exactly. But he is just at the end of the day, you look and where you see the rankings, and he's just always right there, consistent, playing on still what I think is a bad football team defensively. And who knows what they're going to get out of Todd Gurley. I mean, he may have more success just catching balls out of the backfield than actually running between tackles this year. So it's going to mean more.
We have him on our League of Leagues
Matt
team.
Ryan is always near the top in passing attempts, always for years.
And now there's no Hooper. They brought in Hayden Hurst. But Jake, everyone's talking about like a Ridley breakout this year. And I just see him kind of doing the same thing, maybe a bit better than he was last year. And like, he too was hobbled up. Mm-hmm. But I don't see a situation where the rules get. I mean, I do. It's funny when you're talking like absolutes like that.
Yeah.
Like when I say I don't see it, like it's a low probability outcome that all of a sudden Ridley is Julio and Julio is Ridley.
Is the number one.
I would not stake anything on that.
No,
it could
yet.
happen.
Yeah.
It's probably like 80 to 1 to happen kind of
Yes.
thing. So don't bet it.
No.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Calvin Ridley's still the number 2. Russell Gage is going to get involved probably as the 3-2. This is, remember, Dan Quinn's now taking over and letting Cotter arguably even have more control of the offense. And Cotter, good things with Matt Ryan. So I don't think Calvin Ridley's stepping past Julio Jones. I think the only reason is everything you talked about is perception, Pat. Otherwise, I mean, that's like saying Ridley if he was on the Saints would step past Michael Thomas. Like, stop.
Next 2 guys, and this is the team I can't figure out. These are the players I can't figure out. It's a double pass for me at this value. Chris Godwin is the 6th receiver coming off the board at pick 20. Mike Evans is the 7th receiver coming off the board at pick number 28. You add in Gronk, they draft some more running backs.
Yeah.
Tom Brady is the quarterback. Like, are we really thinking Tom Brady's going to throw for like 5,000 yards here? Like, I know that he doesn't, but then all of a sudden they still have Howard, they still have Brate. Like, do we think that not only is Brady going to throw for a ton of yards, or if he doesn't, that the market share for Godwin and Evans is going to be like those Derek Carr years with Cooper and Crabtree, where they both have 30% of the market share? I don't know if that's going to be the case.
That was actually going to be my argument. Like, Chris knows this, and I brought it up before, is, the Tom Brady situation. Everybody talks about how much he loves his slot guys and blah, 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 and all that type of stuff. Initially, Godwin, even before Tom Brady, when we were still talking, Jameis Winston might be back with this team. Chris Godwin, I think, was number 3 for me, and Mike Evans was like 9 or 10. Then we get the Tom Brady news, and I moved Godwin back a little bit, and then not moved like I did my projections, moved him back. He fell back a little bit. Evans stayed around the same fringy wide receiver 1, but this recent news, and to say that they're going to be 12 as their base set, I mean, still not going to be the majority of the time. They just are going to enjoy a lot of 12s. So a lot of 12 set means Gronk and OJ Howard or Gronk and Brait on the field. Well, that takes away the slot option that everybody's talking about. That's going to force it. It's just going to be a lot of Godwin and Evans. And that's why I actually ended up moving Evans back up a little bit. Again, it's the projections that did it, but they're at 7 and 8 for me now. 87 around 1,200, 80 around 1,200, 8 and 8 touchdowns, right around there. Like those aren't the exact numbers, but they're right around the same. To your point, Pat, is I think that this running the 12 actually funnels back more than they would if they were running 3 wide with how much Brady likes to throw and why everybody got excited about Tyler Johnson in the draft.
Yeah.
So I have more concerns about Evans than I do about Godwin. I just think that Evans is a ceiling guy. Like it's funny, we talk about Tyreek Hill. Evans has been a bit like he had the 1 year where he was uber consistent, where he was the only guy in town. Yeah. But now that's just not the case anymore. So Mike Evans, there were 7 instances last season where a player had 225 air yards. Evans had 3 of those games. Do you know who the last receiver to see over 225 air yards in a game was from Tom Brady?
Oh my goodness.
Tom Brady? Randy Moss.
Brandon Lloyd in 2015. Sorry, 2012 against Week 15 against San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, just the way that New England has run their
off that season.
What's that?
Just the way New England.
I said he made a career off that 1 year.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, just the way that New England's run their offense over the past few years. I mean, obviously we know that there haven't been too many weapons there, and they use all their running backs and check down to those backs or to Gronk or in the slot to Edelman, But
let's not forget how much of the value in Godwin and Evans last year was derived from good run defense, bad pass defense, always playing catch up, and Jameis just turning the ball over all the time, putting them in a hole and then having to bomb to get out of it. Like that's actually a part of this. Godwin had 120 targets last year, didn't have a drop. That was the most. That's why I think he's just more reliable. I think that's going to go with Brady. But the big thing that I have with Evans is he's such a big body, and maybe that gets a huge utilization from Brady in the red zone. Or he just throws to Gronk like he always does.
Exactly. He just throws to Gronk or he throws to OJ.
Like Gronk, you remember that 1 year when Jerome Bettis kept having like 5 carries for 3 yards and 2 touchdowns? I can see Gronk games where it's like that, like 2 catches, 3 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like he's not going to do enough to be like an elite tight end for fantasy, but he's going to pilfer all these touchdowns away to make him like relevant, but he's going to take it away from these guys. I can see that happen.
Well, then let me ask you
catches
this.
and 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'll ask both of you, Chris, and you can answer first. Then, so for the point I was going to bring up, you keep mentioning Tom Brady, Pat, and I obviously don't think he's throwing for 5,000, but I have him throwing for about 4,435 touchdowns. I think he does better in the touchdown department with this team. But to your point, and if you want to go jump in, Chris, so like right now, I just mentioned the fact I have around 8 touchdowns for Godwin and Evans. For Gronk, I have 5.4. Like I don't think he's at this point involved. To your point. If I'm wrong, and to you, what you're saying, Pat, he does have 9 or 10 touchdowns. Obviously, that's going to siphon from Evans and Godwin.
Yeah, I can see a scenario where Pat is talking about where he's on the field, maybe not as much as we're used to seeing him over the past couple of years, but he is definitely part of the red zone package, and he's a guy that's going to, probably steal a few touchdowns away from these guys. But
and I think that OTAs might determine this as well. Like we don't have an extended preseason or an off-season camp. Right. Like if Brady's calling audibles up on the line, who's going to know everything that's going on? Gronk is maybe.
Absolutely.
He might have like brain damage. I don't know.
He'll remember.
Doing too much CBD during the offseason. He's taking some chair shots and wrestling.
Yeah, by the third audible, he'll clue in and he'll remember. But Godwin to me is...
he was scared to do that? Sorry.
What?
He was scared to jump off that thing that Vince McMahon had to show him. Vince McMahon jumped off that thing he jumped off at WrestleMania to show him it was safe.
And then Vince was like, well, he's like an 80-year-old man. He's fine. I'll be fine.
Yeah, just to wrap it up with these two, I mean, it's kind of repetitive what you guys are saying. It's Godwin for me. Like Godwin is I just think he's a
7 is too
talent,
high for Evans.
Nothing to do with Evans. Yeah, I mean, Evans had a game last year, and it's just one game, but he had a 0. He did have a game where he had 0 fantasy points. I mean, Godwin, I just think he's a little bit more reliable. You mentioned the drops. He's been a red zone beast. He runs nice routes. I'm perfectly fine where Godwin is going. Where Evans is going, it's a pass for me.
To your point earlier, Pat. Well, I was just to say real quick, kind of your Michael Thomas and weight. while Evans came out at 8 in my projections, I probably wouldn't take him, and I would just wait and take Golladay or Thielen, or I'm just going down my list. Robert Woods, I would just wait instead of taking what's going to cost to get him.
Yeah, number 8 is Kenny Golladay. He's going at pick number 28, so the pick after Mike Evans. Do we worry that Golladay kind of overachieved last year a little bit?
No, because look who he's playing with for some of the season.
Or my main man Driscoll.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah,
He
so
was great, actually.
that's the thing is if Stafford is okay for 15 of the 16, if he basically plays the entire season, Golladay, I think Golladay, for everybody getting excited about Calvin Ridley and everybody else out there, Golladay, a full season with Matthew Stafford is somebody I think that could push for the top 5 again. I think, what did he finish, like 5 last year?
Yeah, he's 7th among qualified wide receivers in air yards per game, too, over the past 2 seasons at over 100 per. And that's with Driscoll and some of these other losers
top
from
in yards
last
per
year.
reception, too. He's just, throw it up to him. He's just a beast. I don't even think we've seen the best of him. I think he can get a little bit better and put up some more numbers, maybe touchdown-wise. But you look at him and Marvin Jones.
And Danny Amendola.
Yeah.
And the Hawk.
Marv... I actually like the Hawk. That's a nice little Hawk. You missed that, Jake. Is good facial expression there from Pat. But in terms of targets per game, even go back to the past couple of years, I mean, Marv, these guys are right on the same pace. I mean, 7 per. I think they're both solid. One, you're going to get obviously a hell of a lot cheaper, but Golladay has that high ceiling. Like when I'm looking between him and Evans, it's actually no question for me. Like Golladay is the guy like that I would rather have.
Okay, well, let's say just throw it out there. Where do you think that Golladay finishes amongst wide receivers? Just, you don't need to be right. Just your ballpark range.
Top 7.
Top 7? Where do you think Marv Jones finishes?
Top 30.
So Jones is the better pick.
Yeah, of course. He is. I mean, he leads the team in touchdowns over the last 3 years. He's been pretty consistent
right now
over that time with Matthew Stafford. And I was looking into Marvin Jones, just trying to find some values over the past couple of weeks, and I was looking at targets per game. They're dead on in terms of targets per game. I mean, even with Golladay getting some more work down the stretch with Marvin Jones hurt last year, he's a red zone option. The team stinks. They're going to be playing from behind. Patricia can run the ball all he wants with his multiple running backs, but they're going to have to throw the football. I don't think the secondary is all that good. So I love Golladay, but I think Marvin Jones is, I don't even know if he's on this list. We got 40 wideouts here.
Yeah. Where do you have them projected out, Jake?
I actually have Golladay at 9 and Marvin Jones at 28.
Yeah.
So...
And
that
that's
might
not
even
consensus.
be low for Marvin Jones.
I'm not making it as an argument against Golladay by any means. I think he does finish as a top 10 guy.
Yeah.
But I would find maybe it's me having the problem with this, but I don't know if I'd want to own both of them.
No, you don't. You don't.
Like on the same
you don't
team.
want to have to go through that frustration. I mean, but you go back to your point from before, Cooper and Crabtree in the same year with Derek Carr as their quarterback, you would have been fine. You go back to how many years were we deploying both Packers wide receivers, whether it was Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson or James Jones, when they had 2 inside the top 15, you didn't want it, but it was fine if you had it.
And Matthew Stafford was a top 5 quarterback last year before he got hurt.
The other 2 that used to be like that, because I think you really need to hammer down on target share if you're going to do that. Like if you can get 2 guys above 25% on the same
Fitz
team,
and Bolden,
I think that they're going to be fine. I was going to say Sanders and Thomas used to do it as well in Denver.
Okay. Yeah. Sanders and Thomas is another good one. You got to go back. Fitz and Bolden.
But we have to go back to find this. This isn't a regular occurrence that generally happens. It's hard. It's hard to project that.
It is. Yeah. I mean, well,
and we
could go back to last year and Evans and Godwin.
Yeah. And we can.
You were guaranteed to always not you always got one great game potentially too, because if they alternated, you always got at least one.
And 2 guys that are undervalued that we'll get to, and I don't think top 5, but Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are 2 guys.
We'll get to them.
I mean, they're getting a lot of the target shares too.
I'll save it for the Robert Woods conversation because I think there is a real conversation to have about him. But next up on the list, the number 9 wide receiver on draft boards and high stakes leagues right now, Amari Cooper, going at 33 overall. So I think I, like everyone else in the world, really wanted to get on Michael Gallup this year.
Yeah.
That was going to be great. Turns out we probably... how do you see the target share breaking down in Dallas now, Jake?
That's the biggest... Look, I'm not going to say I know 100% because my biggest concern
say
about this
Say
is...
you do know.
I just assume everything you say is 100%, Jake.
As of right now, Cooper leads, but it's not a big lead, and CeeDee Lamb is not far from Michael Gallup. So I want to say, put this out there, is that the worst case scenario for the Cowboys is actually the best case scenario for fantasy. And what I'm going to say is the worst case scenario is one of them bombs and falls to the side, and then for fantasy, we feel great about two of them. The best case scenario for them is actually worst case for us, and that all three are productive, all finish somewhere between 70 and 90 targets, maybe 100, 110 for one of them, but it's never known week to week who's it going to be. And so this is even worse for Amari Cooper now. I can't even see touching him inside. I have him at 18 to point out, if we go back to your target share question, is that I just think CeeDee Lamb's arrival has turned this kind of into the McCarthy back with the Rodgers situation, but we just referenced that with Nelson and Cobb. Is like we could see a scenario where two of them are top 15 wide receivers, but that means one of them has to really fall to the wayside as like a wide receiver 3 or 4.
So the other big thing too with Amari Cooper, last year he set highs in receiving yards, had almost 1,200, and he had 8 receiving touchdowns, which was a career high, despite having 3 games with under 3 fantasy points and 6 games under 10 fantasy points.
Yeah. And a lot of them came late too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got here, he failed to hit the 10-point mark in a full PPR setting in 6 of his 16 games. But on average base, his best 2 years have been with Dallas. I mean, he's been productive with the Cowboys. They've used him properly. Still not in the red zone. He's never been a red zone guy. I mean, even in his early days with the Raiders, Seth Roberts had 1 year where he had 20 red zone targets and Cooper had fewer than 10. But I mean, there's this thing too, when we talk about Julio Jones and Tyreek Hill, is Cooper, if you've owned him, he's really let you down. I mean, you're talking about how some games he's at 0, 5 points or fewer from week 12 to 15 when you need him the most. I mean, there's games where he has 34 points and 20 points. So he has those big blow up games. For me, it's very simple. I don't want any Dallas Cowboy. It's either Zeke or Dak. I mean,
really?
Yeah, I'm not
Zeke or Dak or none.
Or none. No. Not both, Dak and Zeke, but one or the other. And that's it. I'm not going to play this game with the Cowboys. They're going to spread the ball around. There's lots of options. I mean, I'm sure you're going to be fine
what you just
from
did,
week
Chris?
to week. What?
You bought the cake, not the icing.
Yeah, just give me Dak. He's going to spread the ball around. He's going to have a fantastic fantasy season. He's got so many weapons. I mean, people are getting excited about Blake Jarwin too. Like, I can't. I'm sure he's going to get 3 or 4 targets as well.
Oh yeah, I think he gets destroyed with this.
There's enough like random tight ends outside of like the top 8 that are Blake Jarwin-esque, who are probably just like we just talked about TJ Hawkinson. Like you could have Hawkinson or Jarwin for essentially the same price.
Right. So for me, Cooper's an easy fade. I may have some Gallup shares if he continues to fall down the board. I did a dynasty startup the other day, and he went like wide receiver 45.
Okay, well, can we throw the counter to this? How does Amari Cooper outperform this draft position at number 9? You added
other guys get hurt.
But let's say just all things being equal. Let's say defenses can't lock in on him anymore. If we made the case that like in these high stakes leagues, I get why he's going 9. I really do. It's almost the same argument for Tyreek Hill, that if somehow this is the year he is consistent, look at the upside that he brings to the table in these like one-off games. So instead of having the 3 games with fewer than 3 fantasy points or 6 games less than 10, let's say his floor game this year is 10 points. All of a sudden, like he's looking pretty good as long as he can still manage those 3 or 4 games where he's off the charts good.
I think that for that to happen, now we're talking about, and it's within the realm of possibilities, but to answer your question is we need to see Dak around 600 targets or attempts. And then you need to see Amari Cooper a similar target share to last year. And instead of CeeDee Lamb coming in and hurting them both, only siphons and takes away from Gallup. And that's where your concern is. And that's what the point is. Go back to what I was saying is like they wouldn't want that necessarily, but for fantasy purposes, that'd be great for us for Cooper and also Zeke to lose a little bit. I mean, if Zeke's used like he was last year out of the backfield with those amount of targets, it's hard to see any wide receiver, whether it's Cooper, whether it's Gallup, any of them get to 120, 130, 140 targets in a season.
I just feel like there's games where Cooper disappears because he goes up against top coverage and he gets shut down. I mean, there's been multiple times where I've seen,
but maybe more talent on the
Slay.
field now, maybe a more dynamic offense can alleviate some of that pressure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say with bringing in CeeDee Lamb and you have more weapons. It's very possible, but there are games. I mean, go look at the game logs and you see like some of the games where he just didn't show up. I mean, he went up against top corners. I mean, Slay shut him down last year, called him out on social media about it. He lit up the Eagles twice, 2 games against the Eagles, had almost 300 yards. Like now, like who are you going up against, right? So I just feel like there are some games where a little bit of an outlier.
Okay, so at number 10, the receiver coming off the board, number 33 overall is Cooper Kupp, who we had just mentioned. Robert Woods is the 20th receiver off boards in these leagues at pick number 51.
Flip him.
I think that Woods is probably going to have a better year than Cooper Kupp is. And I'm not as worried because people are really pointing to, and Jake has brought up the 12 package playing the 2 tight end sets.
Yeah.
I think people are overestimating how much the Rams are going to play that because they saw it down the stretch last season. I think it's going to be a part of their package, but we saw they went from playing the most 3 wide receiver sets to coming back off that. I think they're trying to throw different looks into their offense a little bit that if people are planning for them to play 12 package, they're just not going to do it. Kupp's going to be on the field. He has seen, here's a fun stat for Cooper Kupp. He has 18 touchdowns in his past 27 games and saw a red zone target in 30 of 39 career games. Now, that's great, and I don't expect that to really change all that much. Woods scored a touchdown on less than 2% of his targets last year. His average the first 2 years with Goff, almost 6%. Like it's going to come back up. It has to.
Yeah, well, that's all anybody was complaining about last year, Jake, was with Robert Woods. Remember all the complaints we had over the years with Woods? And it was just because he wasn't finding the end zone. He was still one of the most consistent wide receivers in terms of targets. He was getting targets every single. I'm not going to flip them, but
I would take Woods over Kupp. I don't know
just
if I would
because of the price.
I don't know if I would take Woods at number like
Jake. If they were the same price, you would take Woods over Kupp.
I would take Woods.
I would take Woods. In my rankings, Woods will be above Kupp.
You guys are crazy.
I only have Woods for 5 touchdowns and Cooper Kupp for 8. My biggest thing between the two of them is the target share and the consistency. I have Woods at 12 and Kupp at 20. Now, mind you, I was going to say this earlier. We got on a different topic. I wish everybody from about Robert Woods at 12 to like 29, I could just put as like the same wide receiver because there's such a slim margin that 1 touchdown over the entire season is going to move somebody 15 spots. That's how tight this group is. I want to make that clear for everybody. So don't get hung up if you're like, no way. Like to go back to it real quick. Cooper Kupp, I have for 187.7 half PPR. Robert Woods is 198. So there you go. 11 points. So if that. What I'm going to go to is, I know you're talking about that, Pat, in the 12, and it's not just the 12 for me. It's not just the 12 set. It's that the snap count was also down for him towards the end of the season over the last 4 or 5 games, not just with the emergence of Tyler Higbee, but there was games where Kupp was all of a sudden out there only 60% of the time. This is somebody that used to be out there 95% of the time. And I'm not saying definitively that's going to carry for Sean McVay into this next season. And as you pointed out, Sean McVay might just be playing head games with everybody. We're going to run 12, and then the first 5 games are 3 wide, and we never even see a 12 set. All that being said is the one consistent is Robert Woods. If somebody's coming off the field, it's Kupp. If Kupp is coming off the field to line up out wide, which I love the kid, but he's better inside than he is out. And all of a sudden Van Jefferson or Josh Reynolds is out there and they're just kind of doing what we used to complain about the Seahawks 3 years ago is they're rotating that number 2 wide receiver, kind of like a timeshare. That's my concern. That's why Kupp is down where he is I think that he comes off the field and Robert Woods never comes off the field.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good blocker. And that's one thing that Woods has always been known for, is stay on the field Buffalo, if they're going to run. I mean, the offensive line in LA it's kind of spiraling. I mean, if they lose Whitworth, I don't think they're going to be able to
here's the thing.
well.
Here's the case for both of them. The Rams might not be very good.
Yeah.
That they might have to throw a lot this year, potentially. Especially with the other
team.
team.
A lot last year.
Especially with the teams in their division like being pretty good now.
It might
even
be the
Arizona.
Best division in football, maybe.
Potentially. Yeah. Well, no, we always think there's one division that's great.
Yeah.
It turns out
to your point,
great.
Chris, they 626 attempts for Goff last year.
Yeah.
Now here's the counter. Goff sucks. So what are we going to do?
He does suck. Yeah. I mean, you bring up good points. And I do remember last year Kupp. Yeah. I mean, because it was almost automatic in the first, 12 weeks of the season that this guy was playing nearly 100% of the snaps. I mean, he was always on the field.
Yeah.
But,
all right. Last one of part 1 of the wide receivers. And probably the most fun name to talk about. Going wide receiver number 11
Jake's boy.
in drafts. Pick number 35. Odell Beckham Jr., who has Jake blocked on Twitter still.
No. He blocked me.
But you didn't block him after?
No.
Oh.
I never blocked him. I've been trying to get him back. I've been trying to get him back. I've been trying to get unblocked. What's his face that covers the Browns? Zagura is supposed to be helping me out, and he hasn't helped me out.
How about this? How about you just don't worry about it? Like it's not that big of a deal.
Because he's one of my favorite players.
Here's something that is a much larger deal than Beckham blocking Jake on Twitter. He caught just 25% of his end zone targets in 2009. The NFL average, 38%. All other Browns, 35%. has Beckham lost his supernatural athletic ability after all these injuries for consecutive years, that he's still good, but he's just not going to ever be that guy? Like, he's tiny, but you used to be able to throw the ball up to him in the end zone and he would go get it. But maybe he's lost 15% of his athletic ability just because he can't jump as high anymore. He's not quite as fast anymore, that he needed to be at that peak level to do all these things. He's just not there anymore.
Well, I think part of it is just Baker's like decline. Essentially, he declined. Like, I know we were looking at his rookie season, but he didn't move forward, and I would call that a decline if he didn't take a step forward. And it didn't need to be what everybody expected, and then Baker Mayfield is going to be top 5. And like, look, everybody got caught up in the Browns, whether it was 10%, 100%, no matter how much, everybody got caught up in the Browns. For your point about Odell Beckham, I think a lot of it was Baker, Kitchens in this offense, because let's think back and just look at Odell Beckham's career and think about like the touchdowns. Like, to your point, the red zone touchdowns has always been like half of his game. Like, we were talking about him as some of those big catches and those big touchdowns were like Tyreek Hill type touchdowns outside the 30, outside the 40. Like, it's just his playmaking ability. I don't think he's lost anything if you watched him play. Like, he still looks like a freak out there. I just think this offense was just miserable last year under Kitchens. I wouldn't take him this high, but I don't have him that far. I'm at 15, but I think the realm of outcomes for Odell Beckham is certainly inside the top 10. And real quick, to reference, I sighed because we still haven't mentioned the name. I have somebody at number 5 we still haven't mentioned yet.
Oh, I guess we'll get to them in part 2. What do you make of?
He's next.
What do you make of OBJ?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's a hard guy to figure out. I watched a lot of Cleveland Brown games last year. I'll admit, I was drinking the Kool-Aid probably a year too early. Freddie Kitchens is clearly a loser. Didn't know how to, play call. There was so many things that
they bring
noticed.
in Stefanski. Like, do you just give him like basically the Diggs role in this offense? Like, are they just
maybe?
Run
But they
the
also
ball?
bring in. I think they're going to run the ball. You also
Hooper.
bring in Austin Hooper, and now you got Kareem Hunt there for a full year off season. He's going to get 5 targets a game.
Yeah, Landry's going to soak everything.
And that's
still.
the thing I want to talk about is Landry. We're talking about disrespect with 2 guys. I mean, you could almost flip Landry and Beckham. Everyone would say that we're crazy because the skill set is Beckham, but Landry in 2 years in Cleveland has been awesome. He was better than Beckham last year. He was more consistent. Yeah. He was definitely more consistent in the red zone. He's been a beast in the red zone over the past couple of years. You go back with his time in Miami, and he's somebody that you're getting in the 30s that could easily finish as a wide receiver too.
Jarvis Landry, wide receiver number 32 coming off the board, pick number 84.
It's a steal.
I have him at 31.
How about this?
Well, here's why.
Well, no, hold on. How about this? You mentioned like the red zone stuff with Landry.
Yeah.
Landry was better downfield than Beckham was with
was
Baker
more
last year.
consistent.
Landry caught 55.6 of his deep targets last season. Odell, 40%.
Yeah, he went down. He went to him a lot on third down. I went to a game in Cleveland last year, and I watched, and I found at times, and Beckham actually, he was down at the 1 is how the season went with him. It looked like he was finally going to get a touchdown, but it just seemed like Baker was trying to force the ball. Maybe they have a little bit more of a connection in year 2, with different coach, different offense, but it seemed like at times, Jake, watching, he just tried to force the ball to Beckham. There was times where he had 13, 14 targets and he catches 3 of them, and half of them were just, it's not on Beckham. A lot of it was on Baker and the throws. You're right. He definitely declined, but there's a lot going on in Cleveland on a team that I know they want to run the football.
Yeah, and I think that's the concern. They're running the football, Stefanski, whether or not he was doing that partly because of the pleasing people in Minnesota, or if that's really who he's going to be. Another 12, running a lot, 2 tight ends. As you said, they brought in Hooper. They already had Njoku, although he missed essentially most of last year. But then they drafted Harrison Bryant, which shows that like they want the tight end depth. So I agree with all those concerns. But where I'm going to go with this is kind of like a concern for Jarvis Landry. Like I rarely don't, whatever. I usually project 16 games for everybody. I know. I usually project 16 games for everybody. Jarvis Landry, I only projected for 14. And I think that's a fair risk to take because they're talking about potentially not ready for week 1, let alone the first month. And obviously this will change. If Landry, I knew, was playing 16 games, I'd be a little bit more with you guys and slide down Odell Beckham a little bit because of targets and Landry back up. But as of today, it's because I don't have Landry playing 16 games.
I mean, I would still rather have Beckham than have Landry.
Yeah, I mean that.
I just like, again, if it's almost sort of like the same price type of deal.
Yeah.
If you could pick one of them, I would pick OBJ just based for the upside purposes alone. If I needed someone who I knew was going to like make sure that they would be inside like the top 40 of receivers this year, Landry's definitely that guy.
Yeah.
But it's very doubtful that he'll be a top 5 guy. Beckham still has that outcome.
I know. I think with Beckham, we're still like, we talk
We're
about
thinking
Julio,
back.
what's in our mindset. Yeah,
It's-
we're
it's-
thinking
it's
back.
it's the anti-Julio.
Exactly. You're looking at those big games that he had with the Giants, all the catches, all the times where he was the number one, all the usage he got inside the red zone. There's a lot going on in Cleveland.
Do you think it's the flash thing that goes along with it? Like when you like Julio's not flashy whatsoever.
No.
He makes really difficult things look so easy
Yeah.
that you're just like, oh, okay, he did it.
Yeah,
You know,
he just
nice
drops the
catch, man.
ball nonchalantly.
But you remember like, oh, here's Julio dropping this 55-yard easy touchdown like right off of his hands.
Yeah.
You don't care what else he did in the game with his 10 catches.
Right.
But if Beckham has a huge play, it's like, whoa! It's almost like we mentioned the name earlier. Brendan Lloyd used to be kind of the same way, where it'd be like Brendan Lloyd is horrible, but you're like, huh? He just made the 8 hardest catches of the week.
Well, look at the range of outcomes when we're talking about NFFC here, like the minimum pick 20 overall. We got the ADP at 34 and then the max 50. Like there is just a range where you are either all in on Beckham and taking that upside on the bounce back. And the fact that he could be a league winner for you. I mean, it's possible that he's your second wide receiver, depending on how you go about your draft. And if he falls to the late third,
Yeah,
wins
like
you a league.
just
Wins you a league.
based on these ADPs, the way that it could potentially shake down, like you could have a team. Let's see here.
You could take a back in the first and go with and have like
You
a,
could
your
real
point
you
before,
could
Chris.
well hold on. You could realistically let's just say with just based on the numbers that are breaking down here, you could have McCaffrey, Kupp, and Beckham. That could be your first 3 picks potentially. It's probably not,
could.
but that's how it could shake down.
I'd like
Because
that.
first
I'm
and
fine
then the
with that.
wraparound.
giddy up.
I don't know if I like that. I mean, obviously I like it. It has Christian
Yeah, it
McCaffrey.
has
On the team. He's the best
McCaffrey.
player. But
I wouldn't want Kupp. I wouldn't want Kupp there. But to your point, is Beckham is your number 2. But to your point, Chris, like real quick, just for fun, do you guys remember how many touchdowns Baker threw last year?
I don't know, like 17.
21.
22. Chris is always good at these games. Down from 5 from his rookie season. I think that's the point. Is they weren't on the same page. And I'm not saying this offseason and Stefanski and I'm not saying they're going to get on the same page. There's certainly where this can carry over, and Baker just doesn't mesh well with Odell Beckham for whatever reason. Play style, I don't know. Whatever. The point is if they get on the same page, you go back to Beckham's rookie season, and I only bring up his rookie season where he only played 14 games for one reason, is the targets were almost the exact same, but the receptions were so much higher, which made the yards higher, which made the touchdowns higher, because he was connecting with Eli Manning right out of the gate. If Baker improves over last year, even gets back to his rookie season, Odell Beckham could easily be back inside the top 10, flash or not.
We'll say this. He
Sure,
can't get
he could
any worse.
easily be back inside the top 10, but he's being drafted as number 11. Like you're drafting him for where you want it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're not like his position right now.
You're
has
buying
no,
most of the risk.
You are
Yeah,
buying most
yeah.
of the risk.
And the only reason I knew that about Baker is because I had some shares. I mean, he had -2 for me one day.
You know who
everybody
you
had some shares.
that is untrue. You know who you should have drafted? Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen. Yeah, for sure.
No, I got him in my auction for like $3, and then I dropped him from Jameis Winston after week 2.
It took, I think, 7 games last year for Baker to have a game where he had 2 passing touchdowns. It was 0 or 1. I mean, and again, I put a lot of that on Freddie Kitchens.
Well, that's going to do it for part 1 of the wide receiver player profiles. You follow Meaney on Twitter at Chris Meaney. You follow Jake on Twitter at AllInKid and check him out at The Athletic. Me at The PME, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Also, hit the description if you want to find all the running back player profiles, and I will update everything for when the wide receiver profiles, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, however many we do, get released as well. Tune in, keep an eye out for the rest of them, because we're going to be kicking off with someone Jake thinks should be higher in terms of the ADP once we go through this. I'm Pat Mayo. Smash the like. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo experience! Experience!